46,715 trainings that were conducted. And of those, 47,000 plus were done by credentialed trainers. So thinking back to April's question, that's a pretty high impact that the credentialed trainers are having on the field for sure.
Okay. Yes. So then let's see. Do you want to go over any more of that before I?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So at the time that we ran these numbers, we have 715 trainers. And as you can see, we've got over 300 trainers that are actively training during the time frame that we were looking at, which is, I guess I should share that, last fiscal year. So that would be fiscal year 23, so July 1, 22 to June 30th, 2023. So this is the time frame that we're looking at. And I'm trying to move my little box here so I can see the other numbers. So, and of those trainings by those trainers, um, we had 27,000 unique participants, almost 28,000 folks who attended training. So that means they attended at least one training during that year. And of that, 23,000 were trained by, again, credentialed trainers. So a huge impact there. And all the hours came to 508,263 hours. So kudos to you all for cranking out those trainings for sure. And then Angie, you can help me speak about the credentialed part. So as far as all the trainings, all the hours, and of course we know it's more than just hours. They're getting the content that you're delivering, they're gaining new skills and knowledge to apply to their classrooms. Um, but also they're obtaining credentials. So you had 977 Child Care Commonwealth credentials, and well, total, sorry, Child Care Commonwealth and CDAs that were obtained during that time frame as well. Anything you want to add to that, Angie?
No, probably the only thing I would add is that, we're data, so you're going to get data from us on what you've done in the field. And I want you to know that we recognize that, yeah, we can turn around these numbers for you, but we know your impact on the floor, with the providers and what you're providing in terms of skills and knowledge, is wonderful. It's something that we can't measure in our numbers that we're showing here today, but these still are mind-blowing. Most of the training, with the participants, you look at, there's 28,000 unique participants trained, but the vast majority of those are also taking credentialed trainer training as well. So you may not be doing all of the training, but you're hitting most of all of the teachers, all the people in the classrooms.
For sure. And so, Angie, let me ask you this. So I know that the big thing right now is the digital badging. So from all of this data that you've given us, can you tell us how many school age and infant toddler trainings there are right now, and how many are expected to be needed with the new digital badging?
Yeah. So again, looking at the time frame that Jennifer referred to previously, this is last fiscal year. And I got to say, there was a lot of work that went into determining what meets a badge, and we're going to talk about that a lot today. But we worked with the Division of Child Care, who gave us guidelines of what to look for. And we went back to the magic date, November 2021, something, Jen.
November 8th.
Okay, 2021.
Yeah.
So
we actually went back before that until it was established November 8th, 2021.
Okay. Yeah. So we reviewed a lot of training content, and as it stands now, there are 176 that are face-to-face webinars available for the infant toddler, and 202 that are non-face-to-face. And then for the school age, that number breakdown is 148 and 132. So there is content out there, but a significant thing to understand about the badge is that when we're showing the 176, the 202, and the 148 and 132, they just met the training type of school age or the training type of infant and toddler. So knowing what we know about the badge is that you have to have so many hours in each of the core content areas. It's wonderful that we have these available, but it's going to get down to the core content subject area where we're going to need specific trainings so that folks can actually obtain those badges.
Right. And so on that, can you tell us exactly what is the digital badging and what that means?
Certainly. So a digital badge is just another achievement that the Division of Child Care wanted to some kind of indicator of an accomplishment in dedicated hours to a specific content area. And the infant, toddler, and the school age were two of those that were started as a target because a lot of the training is applicable for preschool in our system. But when you start looking at the data, what was missing was some targeted stuff for school age, targeted stuff for infant and toddler. So that was the focus. And it was a way for to also encourage those in the classroom to take training that is targeted to the age environment they're working with. So this is the way to encourage that. It's not the same level of commitment as going towards the Commonwealth and CDA. So it was something a little more, maybe easier to obtain. That could be questionable when you start to look at all the core content pieces. But the goal was, let's celebrate this because you're looking at your professional development, you're focusing on a core content area, and let's celebrate it with some kind of achievement, some kind of education record that will be reflected, and you'll get a cool little badge that you can throw on to your signature.
So now tell us, how do trainers play into this digital badging? What is going to be their role?
Okay, I hope I can emphasize this enough today. You guys are critical. We're over here crunching what you're doing, but you're going to be critical to whether folks obtain that badge because you're the ones developing the content, you're the ones putting it on the floor, you're the ones that are then putting it into the system where we have the ability to crunch it. And so what we hope you take away from today is knowing that we're going to work together so these folks can achieve this badge, and how we can help you and how you can help us do that. Because we want folks to achieve a digital badge, and the only way they're going to do that is if we're all on the same page with this, and we really want people to achieve it.
Yeah, so
we want to see this lift.
So to make sure that we're all understanding that, so basically trainers really know their content better than anybody else, and they need to, and basically what they enter into the training details will be used to determine that eligible content, correct?
That is it in a nutshell.
Okay, so now, so for a trainer to get their training badge approved as infant, their training approved, a badge approved as infant and toddler school age, what do they need to do, and what is the protocol going to be for them?
Okay, so I briefly mentioned earlier when we were reviewing the initial set of trainings, we were doing it based on keywords, and then we were digging into the content. And when I say digging into the content, we're looking at titles and we're looking at descriptions. And we're looking for specific things in there that tell us this is only geared to a certain age group. This is only infant and toddler related content. This is only school age related content. The only things that we really have to go on to make those decisions from the TRIS side is the training description and title. And so we can only go on what's been provided to us in the system. So we've tried to expand and add a few new fields to the training detail page to try to pull out a little bit more information, because again, we want We want to get what we need so these folks can achieve the badge. But it does come down to what gets entered into the system is what we're making our judgments by. And we may be asking questions of you about that description and about those titles and descriptions because we want it to work if it truly is applicable to the infant, toddler, or the school age badge.
Right. And I know in a little bit, we're going to talk a little bit more about what those descriptions should look like. But before we do that, this is actually a question that I have recently received about the badging. Can you explain to us how college courses and/or conference sessions work within the digital badging process? Can you get a whole conference badge approved? And how many hours could a conference give for badge approved courses? And how is this decided?
Okay, this is a great question. So conferences have always been, I'll do college coursework first.
Okay.
So college coursework is entered into our system as the straight 45 hours or whatever hours are being submitted at that particular point. Our system only allows per training 2 core content subject areas per training session. A college coursework comes in as 1 training session, therefore it can only have 2 potential core content subject areas. So that means the most a college course could obtain towards a badge could be 8 hours if the syllabus can allow us to determine that there are more than 1 code core content subject area there. So while they may have completed 45 hours of clock hour credit, the max they would get for those 2 codes would be 4 because that's the max needed for those specific areas. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does about the college coursework. Yes.
Okay. Conferences is similar. So from a standpoint of training agencies and, you know, those who are putting on a large conference, it's always, it's more enticing. It's easier. It's an easier route to just lump that together and say, this is my conference. It's going to be 15 hours. And we'll put it all under 1 training title. Everybody gets the 15 hours, 1 training, 1 sign-in sheet, 1 credit. The downside if those conferences are not broken down by the individual workshops is we're back to, you've got 1 session, 2 possible core content subject areas. So if you have a conference that is, let's say it's 3 days and there's 20 hours possible, if you're only entering it in as 1 lump sum, 1 training session, the max hours you are going to be able to get are going to be 8 hours for in 2 separate core content subject areas. It's always a recommendation on our end that if you're doing a conference that you're entering the individual workshops and not just from a badge standpoint, it just the content standpoint, you're offering a wide variety of workshops and that doesn't get reflected if you put it all under 1 title.
And I'll add to that, Angie, too. If it's if all of them are not infant toddler or all of them are not school age, then we can't parse out and decide if it's going to apply to one badge or the other because it can't be both.
Very good point.
Angie, I'm gonna interrupt for a second because I've had several questions come to me while you've been talking. So I'm gonna ask you a few that have come through the chat. So Connie had a question back when you were talking about y'all went back till November 8th of 2021, I believe you said. So she wanted to know, how do they know if their trainings are in there and qualified for the badging?
So the easiest way a trainer would know is when you're reviewing your content, you can do a search and look at your training content and training details. And if you have a training type that says infant toddler or a training type that shows it's school age, then it's been determined that that training meets those codes and we have set those flags already. So this is, you will look at the training type. And if the training type has infant toddler or has school age, and has already been vetted by us, already been reviewed by us, then it meets that badge.
Okay, so I think you answered Sharon's question, and she had asked, do they need the correct training type as well? So obviously, correct training type is very important. So,
Yes.
okay. So then there's another question that said, will there ever be a box to check for trainers to indicate if it meets a badge requirement?
The way you will know is that after it's gone through either our approval process where you've requested to have a program set up if it's non-face-to-face, or if it's a training request, then those are set ahead of time, and you will know whether it's met the badge by the time you assign credit, because it'll have the training type of infant toddler or the training type of school age. If you enter a face-to-face training today and then submit the sign-in sheet next week, we haven't reviewed that yet. So you may pick training type of school age or infant toddler, but when we review it, if it doesn't meet that, we may remove that training type, or we may add it, vice versa. Let's say you chose, you choose other ECE. That's what it defaults to. Most people leave it as other ECE. If that training is entered as that, but we're doing our review process, our audit process for trainings, the face-to-face trainings that are submitted to us, we may determine it meets the badge. So we'll change the training type. So if you want to know what meets the badge for trainings that have already been entered, you can look at the training type and see if it has infant, toddler, or school age.
So it works the opposite way, I assume. If they put school age or infant toddler and you all review and it doesn't, then you're going to switch it to other ECE or something else, correct? So
That is correct.
will those trainers get any type of notification that that's been changed either way?
Not currently, no.
Okay.
But that is something we can talk about, how could we do that and make that not, a heavy burden on our side in terms of resources, but we can definitely look at some way to do that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, if you have a trainer who thinks that this is going to count for infant and toddler and they mark it, and then they're marketing that way, they think that people are going to get credit for that, but you guys have changed it. So really they just need to keep going in and checking that and seeing that if it's been changed, correct?
Yeah. The
Okay.
other thing they could do, and we're certainly welcome this, is enter their training in advance, ask us to review it. We can review it. And then they're not, if there's any questions.
Okay.
And then I will also say, if you're a trainer and you look at a training that you felt like should meet that badge and it doesn't have that flag of that training type, ask the question, review your descriptions. And I know we're going to talk about that in a minute, but review your description, make sure it has the type of things that we need in there to make it clear to us. But yeah, send us an email and we'll gladly review and say, provide some tips on our decision. We can share what went into our decision of whether it met the badge or not.
Okay, a few more questions. How many hours? Oh, hold on. I feel like there was one before that. Yeah. Okay. What is the purpose or incentive for educators to obtain a badge?
Well, okay, there's a lot to this one. Let me just come from our standpoint. What I think is an incentive of it is they're not repeating training. They're getting training that's relevant to their classroom. But it's also, it kind of supports their professionalism, taking ownership, digging in and looking at their own PD. I mean, and there is a monetary incentive to the badge as well. So, I mean, it's $50. That's a good deal too. But I think the goal is to look at the their professional development and kind of start to take it a little seriously about not just meeting licensing clock hours. Let's look at how can I do this and it really be reflective of something I'm learning, and celebrate it.
Is that $50 for each badge or is that for all the badges?
My understanding, it's each badge.
Okay.
I don't know if Lauren or somebody from DCC is on here but I think I think you can achieve an infant, toddler and a school age badge, although I would probably say that'd be kind of difficult to do. That's a lot. And I'm not sure, when the goal is to target the group you're working with, if there will be many that'll do both, but
One other question that was in the chat was how many hours do you need in each type? I'm assuming core content subject area to get the badge.
you need at least 4. You need a total of 30 hours of training that is dedicated to the training type of infant, toddler, or school age. And then you have to have at least 4 hours in each of those core content subject areas.
That was all we had in the chat for right now, Angie. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, they're very good questions. Very good questions.
Oh, well, I did have another question that said, how will this work? It just popped up. How will this work for family childcare having mixed age groups?
It comes down to the content. Is the content specific to infant, toddler? Is the content specific to school age? And I think that's a great question, because sometimes that can get a little murky. You think your trainings after school. Let's do the school age. You have all of your teachers that you're providing the training for are after school, but your content only specific because of their role as after school, or is it something that would be applicable to more than one age group? And if it's applicable to more than one age group, it wouldn't just meet the standard of school age just because everybody in the classroom is school age. Did that make any sense, folks? I feel like I said school age 100 times.
And I think there's another question, Miss April. They keep popping in, but that's okay. It's good
They
conversation.
do. Okay, so Connie, I'm assuming she's wanting some clarification. You have to teach 30 hours or have 30 different hours in courses that you teach?
Okay, you have to have the participant has to achieve 30 total hours of training that is training type of infant, toddler. So they have to have 30 hours. But more than just the 30 hours, they have to have a breakdown of 4 hours in each of the core content subject areas. So I could technically have 100 hours in infant, toddler training and still never hit the 4 hours in each of the core content subject areas. So that's why it's important that, as trainers, agencies, all of us that interact with these teachers, that they understand that when they're looking for a training to meet a badge, they need to be paying attention to their training record. What do I already have in each of the core content subject areas? Then I can use the calendar and I can search for infant and toddler in the core content subject areas where I still need hours.
And I don't know, Connie, if you're thinking, after I kind of read the question, I thought maybe you were thinking like as a credentialed trainer, you would get a digital badging, but that's not how it works. The digital badging is for the providers who are taking the training. So as, our point here today is just to kind of make sure that we as trainers know what we can do to help have our trainings meet the digital badging requirement so that they can meet that or achieve that goal. So as trainers, we wouldn't necessarily get the badge. We're just helping the providers get a badge. So another question was, what about IECE coursework such as IECE 250 that's specific to infant and toddler programming?
So that would be one that would count towards the badge. but it would be determined how much information we have in what core content subject areas would be applicable. And because you can't break down the total number of hours for that course over all of the core content subject areas, it's only limited to 2. So yes, it would be applicable, but because there's a limit on core content subject areas of only 2 per training, then it would break down between those 2 core content subject areas.
Okay, so so for a 40, so it translates over into 45 clock hours. So what's the maximum amount of hours that they would receive, even though the training's going to hit on all of those subject areas? What's the maximum amount that they would receive? Because this question has came up before. I mean, they have credentials that are specific for school age and infant and toddler at the community colleges. So I'm just asking the question, how much can they expect to receive?
They would be able to receive for any one training in our system. And that could be this college course that you're referring to, or conference. If it's entered as one session, the max number of hours that could be obtained would be for 2 core content subject areas. So regardless of the total number of clock hours for the training session, they could only get a max number of 8 hours because there's only 2, you can only choose 2 core content subject areas, and you only need 4 in each. So while a 45-hour course may break down into 2 core content codes and be 27.5 hours a piece, only 4 of those are going to go towards the badge because that's all you need in each of the core content areas.
I got you. This PowerPoint, are you guys going to be sending that out later?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much for the clarification. I appreciate it.
It will probably be included with the recording that we'll post into the online trainer community. So it won't necessarily be emailed out to everybody, but we will include it as a resource for after this session.
Another few questions, Angie, was I'm sorry, like I don't
No,
mean to-
this is awesome.
Okay.
This is good. I mean, I think this is the best way to do it. If they've got questions, it's best to answer them. So, and get that kind of cleared up.
Do badges expire?
This is a good one. I think they do. And I'm saying because one of the documentation records that we have from the Division of Child Care says that they are good for 3 years. But is someone from DCC on here?
Not that I saw.
Okay, I'll get some clarification on that. So in our system, we're not going to be issuing them now until 2024, and they're going to be good. If they are only good for 3 years, they'll be good until 2027. But we found some documentation that said there was an expiration on them, but I just want to get more information on that before I give something definitive here. It won't be removed from your record. So I can definitely tell you that. So once you get issued the digital badge, it's going to be part of the education record, and it'll show on the education record. But I think the idea around it maybe having some kind of time limit is that content changes around infant toddler, and you may want to be encouraged to get new content in that area. I don't know, but like I said, I'll try to get some more clarification on that.
Okay, so I'm assuming once you get clarification, the other questions that kind of go along with that are what would the application process and how will renewal work for those? So I know that since you haven't got that worked out, you probably don't have those answers yet, but just to let you know that
Yeah.
that's also asked too. I think we're good now, baby. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm glad that there's a conversation happening. This is great. So all this time we've been kind of talking about these training descriptions. So if it's important for a training description to be very accurate, what would that look like to get badge approved?
Okay, so I already mentioned that we're really paying attention to that description, and we're looking for those keywords that are telling us an age group. And so I hopefully you're seeing the screen where I've put up a couple of examples. So when we're doing on our end, it's kind of a tedious process, and I will let you know, we're looking at every title that comes through and every description that comes through, trying to make it work towards the digital badge. And what we need most is that when that description is put into our system, that it be very, very well developed, that gives us a quick summary of what the course is about, kind of what you might see in a conference brochure. This is why you need to come to my training. But then give us the, you know, what are the objectives? And especially in this, with this discussion, you know, who is this targeted to? What are the age groups this is targeted for? So I've kind of highlighted on here just some of the, you know, the basic parts that stand out to us in this particular description. You know, key aspects of toddler physical development. Upon completion of this course, and then there's a list of all the specific things that the individual will get from completing that training. That's a really good description to stand out to us, that we know exactly what you're doing on the floor.
And Angie, is this an actual training from one of our? Okay,
it is
perfect.
an actual, this
Okay.
is an actual example. So, and I think I just want to say this a lot. I want you to know that we know this. What you're putting into our system, is what we're going by to make a determination on a badge. We know that you can't possibly give us everything you're doing in terms of your content, but we're hoping that you can give us more in this description that at least gives us what we need to make it look like a badge, or count towards the badge. But we know that we're asking a lot in terms of data entry, and I just, beyond the badge, there's a lot of reasons why this description is just so helpful to us, and we really want to know what you're doing on the floor. What are the participants going to get from this? And because it does have a really big impact.
I think you might have a couple of more examples, maybe.
I do.
Okay.
I do. Here's another one. And you can see it starts out of school. There's a quick sentence that just kind of, it includes basic and stretch information about intentional questioning techniques. So that's kind of a broad, I mean, that's just a one sentence, but it's starting to tell us, okay, what's this about? And then it goes into the full objectives. And I also think these are very helpful for the individual, beyond just being helpful for us to make a determination on how it's going to fit into a report or how it's going to fit in for the badge. If you are using our calendar, I think it's also helpful for them. And then this one, again, this one's talking about the infant and toddler. So I just kind of highlighted some of the key things that bring out that this would be applicable to that badge.
Angie,
Yes.
can I just kind of reiterate? I know you already said this once, but especially for trainers who are entering face-to-face, this is a great opportunity. If you feel like you have a training that's coming up that's going to be infant toddler specific or school age specific, go ahead and enter it in ahead of time. You can put it in with the date of that you're planning on offering it, but put it in ahead of time. Ask for that review and audit, and then they can let you know 100% before your participants are there in person whether it's going to qualify for the badge or not. Because the last thing you want to do is tell the participants this is going to qualify for the badge and then find out after the fact that it didn't, because then you may have participants that are getting upset. So if you have any question, especially with a face-to-face training, most people are putting them in after the fact when they're assigning credit. Go ahead and do this part ahead of time, and it will help alleviate some of that and also have pure clarification for your participants.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent point, because we are already working with individuals who are targeting training so they can meet a badge. Jennifer's working very closely with someone now, and she's a couple hours in 2 specific core content subject areas. And the way she's doing that is going to our calendar. She's looking for targeted training. And if you're doing face-to-face training and it's not on the calendar, she's not going to see that that could be a potential course for her. So I think putting it in ahead of time does all of the things that Bethany mentioned, and is also going to be for the user who is down to the last few hours and looking for targeted training. That's going to be critical.
Is there another description, or were those the 2?
Oh, that was it.
Okay. All right. So you can move that one back. We're not quite there yet. Okay. So how do trainers know what specific topics are needed in infant, toddler, and school age areas? How would they find that?
How would a participant understand? I'm sorry, I missed the
No,
question.
trainers. So if trainers want to know what topics are needed in infant, toddler, and school age area, how would they be able to determine that?
I think the calendar is probably the best tool, because on the calendar you have the functionality to choose a training type of infant toddler. Then you can look at the individual core content subject areas and kind of see what might be lacking. So you could use the calendar as a trainer or training agency to see what's being offered and where the gaps are.
And Angie, you can go back to your slide about the breakdown of what's available right now in those core content subject areas. Right. So like we're lacking in program management and evaluation, for example.
Correct. So when we ran these numbers, what she's pointing out in this box is that if you do a calendar search and you're looking for infant toddler, and I'm not sure, yes, I think I did it. This one was for infant toddler. And you look at the different searches by different core content subject areas, you can see where the gaps are.
Okay. So what do you think will have the biggest impact on this digital badging, and what do you think will be the biggest challenges for trainers?
The biggest impact is really in terms of who's going to achieve the badge is how you're entering your information. I know that sounds very simple, but I think you're already doing the work. We just need to have the TRIS record reflect the work. And if you're doing targeted training specific to these age groups, give us what we need in that description, ask us questions. Again, we're all on the same boat. We want you to succeed as trainers and training agencies. We want the folks to get the badge. And so, on our end, ask us how we can help. Ask us questions about, what do I need to do to ensure that this is going to count? Because all we see about your training is what you're entering on that training detail page. And we know you're doing so much more. And I'm going to be honest, it's a little disheartening to me sometimes when I open up a training and it has a 1-sentence description, because not because you didn't. Well, yeah, it's because I don't have a full description, but we can't celebrate what you're doing because that doesn't really tell me what you're doing.
Okay. So I think there's a couple of questions in the chat before we move back to April. Is that correct? Am I right about that? Okay.
Yeah. One of the questions was, do you have a similar breakdown for school age? And I'm sure you could get that. It would just take a second, I'm sure. So,
Yeah, we can do that. We'll certainly do that.
I'm working on
But
it
if
now.
okay.
Jen, look
Okay,
at that.
great. Maybe by the time we answer
yeah.
the next one, Jennifer will have it.
All right.
Okay, so the next question was, how does the IT badge work with the IT CDA?
Well, they're independent. So I don't know what you mean by how they work. They're independent in that we're not looking at anything that's flagged as Commonwealth or CDA in our system in making a determination if it meets the badge. Where I think it aligns is that you are getting hours in each of those core content subject areas or those CDA subject areas that are probably going to be applicable towards a badge just as they are for a CDA. So if you're doing a CDA and we can tell by what you've entered into the system, again, we're back to that description that is infant toddler specific, then it's going to get the badge. It's going to get the infant toddler training type. Therefore, it would count towards the badge. But what I know historically about a lot of the trainings that are entered into our system related to Commonwealth and CDA, they don't have descriptions that go into depth about an age group. So that may articulate at the Council for Professional Recognition level to a specific infant toddler or a specific CDA, but there's a gap between how that is entered into our system as being specific and how it later might be issued by the Council for Professional Recognition.
Those are really good questions.
They are.
Okay,
They
Jennifer, do you have that data yet, or do you need me to give you another second?
Yeah, just give me another second. Almost
Okay.
there.
So are there any other questions that any of our trainers have today on the digital badging? We have a couple more questions for Jennifer, but we're waiting until she gets done with the data there for you.
And I appreciate what Jen's doing, but I'm going to reiterate that you can also do this in real time by the calendar, because you can choose school age, and then you can hit some of those core content codes and just look and see, you can just look to see what results come up. But going back to what Bethany said earlier, that calendar is only the view of who puts their events on for posting prior to. So it wouldn't have, the calendar's not going to show you what's maybe on individual calendars, but not on the TRIS calendar yet. Oh, she's working hard. Can you tell she's got that?
So say there is another question.
Okay.
It says, does it make
Oh,
sense then to have some kind of template or components to include when the trainers are setting up their training information in TRIS?
Okay, I'm not sure I quite understand. Can you give me that again?
It said, does it make sense then to have some kind of template or components to include when the trainers are setting up their training information in ECE-TRIS? I'm thinking that's more maybe toward the training description and what to put in there maybe.
Yeah, I
because
have a follow-up in that. I just said that part of this is you just noted there was a gap between what's in the course, course, in the training description. And typically, like if you look at conference proposals and other kinds of things, you have the description where they restrict the number of words because of the program. They don't want to make it so long for people and make it bulky. So you are limited. So you got to kind of go with that. But then you have separate section where you do the specific learning objectives and another section that looks at the format of the delivery. But in the examples you showed, you incorporate all of those. So they're lengthier description. So you can tease out what you need for the badge determination. So that's why I'm saying maybe if you have some kind of suggested component you must have in the description on the ECE-TRIS or a template so that it reminds them to do all of those extra things, not extra, but there's separate things that we do, it's just not in it and you can't determine it because you don't have that information.
Some of
Right.
that's already in
Yes.
ECE-TRIS though.
Yeah, I do think it's a great point, Jason. We do have a description field, but as Bethany said, we have added a training objectives field, and how does this relate to early childhood field? So we have added other questions to try to, generate some of those pieces, because we've tried modifying the description, the label on the field to say, please include da 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 da. But then we moved away from that and moved into just adding new fields that say, what are the objectives? Because what we're finding is that if we're not getting it all in the description field, we're getting it in those 3 pieces and parts that we're asking on the training detail page. And we're able to then merge that into one description if it's not already in there.
Okay, I was just trying to like streamline rather than having you guys go to all these different pieces to,
Agreed. And
get the
we
information.
would love that as well. We would love
Okay.
that as well. So, we are asking the 3 different pieces, and, hopefully we're getting all of those all of those answered so that we can form a good description. But ideally, yes, we would love it all to just be put in the description field.
And again, this is not all trainers, but ECE-TRIS looks at all trainings. So there are trainers who will only put a 1 or 2 sentence description in. If you are having a detailed description, and if you're listing your objectives, and if you're listing all these components, you're probably already doing what you need to be doing. So don't feel like what Angie is saying. If you feel like you're already doing that, then you're probably doing what you need to. But there are those trainers who, even with all those boxes and all the prompts, they're not putting the details in there. And if those details are not there, they're not going to classify under the badges. That's pretty much the main point that I'm taking from what Angie is saying for a trainer perspective.
That is correct.
And if I can, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead, Jason.
So I kind of saw Greta's chat pop up a little bit. If you're talking about courses at the higher institution, and obviously because their clock hours would be a lot, it's like 3 credit hours for the whole semester. So it's an infant toddler specific course, but you would have to look at the syllabus and you'd have to look at the specific schedule of the content covered for each class session. And that will tell you whether it's about growth and development, or whether it's about the learning environment, or if it's about child assessment, if it's about family and community partnership, but you don't have all of that, I don't believe. So I think sometimes the same thing with the training. You can have the objective, but I don't know. I mean, to really just thinking about how to tease out the components you need to determine the badge. I was just thinking about different formats that we have with different entities. So it's just me pondering.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. So I can tell you that in the college coursework area, we do get a copy of the syllabus, and that is part of the articulation of college coursework hours into training hours. So we do get a lot of that information and able to kind of tease out what should be the core content codes for those from that information on college coursework. The trickier part goes back to those the conference stuff. We do not always get a lot of information around all of the breakdowns on all the workshops, all the workshops. So then that makes it a little more problematic. And then that's why they end up most of the time, well, not most of the time, they could end up just being in the professionalism field, because you want to give some credit towards the badge for college coursework, but if you can't really determine how a breakdown should happen in other core content subject areas, it's going to be given in professionalism.
So this is Greta. So can we at the college level then re-enter that course in TRIS showing that breakdown?
The way the college coursework, it's self-reported by the student. We do have a
Right.
lot of college coursework, a lot of college courses already in the system. So they're already set up with a breakdown. And again, I think those are searchable on the calendar as well, if I'm not mistaken, Jen. I don't know. But if there are, if that what you're referring to, are you talking about college coursework, or you're talking about training that happens at the college level?
Well, I do both, but
Yeah.
right now I'm talking about the actual college course. I just would hate to see students that take a college course for 45 clock hours that covers all 7 core content areas, more than 4 hours. But because of the way it's in TRIS right now, it's not showing for the badging component to get credit for it, because that course, you said, can't count for more than 2 core content areas.
That is correct. You are correct. Now, what would have to happen around that would be a discussion, and we can have that discussion. I am not opposed to this, but we could have a discussion with the Division of Child Care, who would have to make that determination. That's not something that was
Okay.
done from a TRIS level, but from a TRIS level, it was determined that any training could not have more than 2 core content subject area. I understand your argument, and I actually agree with your argument. You're getting 45 hours. If it does meet more than 2 codes, it should meet more than 2 codes. But that is something that I'd have to take to the next level. That's not a decision I could make, but definitely a good question and something to share with them.
Okay, yeah, because we would like to pursue that, because I've got, 18 people in that course right now. And from what I'm hearing is now they're going to get only eight hours, and they're going to have to go find 22 more in infant toddler, which is going to be a repeat of what they're getting at the college level. So I just need to figure it out for them, because they're hearing ramifications about the badging too. So
yeah, it's a great point, and I definitely, as a matter of fact, we have a meeting with them this week, and we'll bring it up, because I think it's a good point.
thank you.
So in my mind, it just makes sense for each of those classes, if they're held in person, to be entered as separate. Could that work?
Well, what Greta was referring to was a college coursework. So it is
Right.
one session. It's not multiple.
So they come for one setting to get 45 hours, or is it like how, I guess, I don't know enough information.
No, that's okay. It's a college course. It's a college level course. And what she is saying, that is, if they receive 3 credit hours in college, it articulates to 45 training hours in TRIS. A college course that's completed successfully accounts for 45 hours of training credit in TRIS. And right now, that course can only be applicable to 2 different core content subject areas. And she's saying the course, you can't break it currently. You can't go beyond the 2 core content subject areas for any one training in the system.
Right. And this may be a discussion, like Angie said, that we need to do some more follow-up with DCC to determine if that can be changed in any way. So with our time getting short, there were a couple more questions. Is April still on here? You've disappeared from my screen.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm still
Okay.
here. Okay.
All right.
And by the way, y'all, Jennifer did post those school age results in the chat. So you can scroll through the chat and see those if you're interested in those school age numbers. So we're
I
gonna
must have sent that to you privately. It's not in general chat.
yes, it's replied to somebody else's.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, it says a reply. Okay, sorry. I was looking for an individual post. Sorry.
Let's see, Jennifer, we were going to ask you a few questions too. So why should trainers use the calendar? And we're just going to reiterate kind of what we said is important.
Well, yeah, just like we did with the breakdown of the core content subject areas, with each training type being infant, toddler, or school age. That's one reason. Like Angie mentioned earlier, I'm working with somebody that needs 1 hour in 2 different core content subject areas, and I was able to direct them to the calendar to search on that. And I don't know if I can share my screen, if everyone is familiar with the calendar training calendar area. We point folks to this daily, not just for this purpose, but I'll try to see if I can
Yeah,
share my
Angie
screen.
may have to stop sharing, so.
But then again, I have like so many screens. Okay, let's try this one. Let me know if you can see this.
Yes.
Okay, so calendar approved trainings area here at the top. And you don't have to be logged in to search. And you'll just pick the school age or infant toddler if you're looking for these, one of these two badges. And then you'll just search on core content, whichever one that you are looking for trainings in. And if your training is not on the calendar, then they wouldn't be able to locate that. So that's one reason. And as far as, sorry, I was looking at college coursework, IECE 250, by the way. Curious. And to answer the other question, Angie, I was not able to find college coursework when I did a search earlier on the calendar area. But just say, for instance, you are doing a training. This is virtually the same thing if you're doing a non-face-to-face training and you do want it posted to the calendar. I'm scrolling really fast. I always tell Angie when I do this to her, close your eyes. Don't want to make anybody dizzy. Make this bigger. So if you do want to post it, you do have to answer yes to the training calendar question to make it visible. And then also please fill out the information so that folks will know how to contact you to register for your training. It's not necessary to fill this information out if you don't want to post it to the calendar. But if you do, all you have to do is change it from no to yes and then fill in your information. And it's as simple as that.
Okay, great. And when would they not want to post their trainings to the calendar?
Yeah, that's another good one. So if you are just going to, if you've been hired per se to go to a specific daycare to train just their staff, you wouldn't want to post it to the calendar unless you really do want folks from other programs to attend your training.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know we're over time and I appreciate everybody hanging on today. I hope you got a lot of questions answered. If you didn't, please feel free to, you can email either me or Bambi or one of your regional training coach. And we can get the questions answered from you. We don't want to bombard Angie and Jennifer. They really do stay very busy. So we could compile another list of questions if people have more questions. And this recording, along with the question and answer forms, will be located in the online community in the HDI Learning course. So I hope that I appreciate everybody being on here today. I appreciate the
Wait, just to
activeness.
say, wait, April, before you
Okay.
say goodbye, don't forget, you guys were offered a free code for an upcoming adult learning course. Everybody that is on here, will receive an email with that code as soon as that course is up and running. So just be watching for that. We didn't forget. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again. I hope that you all feel like you're very important. I was going to do a closing poll, but I know we're over time. So I appreciate everybody. I appreciate all the questions and the activeness. We enjoyed having y'all here today, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Which will be in March.
In
And
March.
the topic that month will be Kentucky Strengthening Families and your training. So that would be a good one to attend as well.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Angie and Jennifer, for being here today. We appreciate it.